Okay, Dan, I'm going to start the broadcast now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I trust that everyone can hear me okay. My name's Dan Omrod. I'm from CSA. CSA and K2 are here this morning to give you a presentation and demonstration of K2 platform and just have a bit of a discussion about efficient automated apps and how we can utilize that to provide productivity and innovation throughout an organisation. If you have any questions during the session, please find the question panel on the right-hand side of the screen. Submit your questions there and we'll go through them at the end of the session. I'm joined here today by Tony Ruppel and Sean Lysergang from K2. And so what we're really here today to talk about and show is about innovation and enabling your business through productivity. So one aspect that you can gain these productivity improvements is through low-code apps. They really are a critical enabler and as a platform allow your business to become more efficient, become more competitive and really unlock innovation and other opportunities with your customers. So CSA, we have an IT company that has a strong focus on assisting businesses transform, and to do that we're also focusing on the transformation of IT. So, you know, we always adopt new technologies and exploit those in businesses to unlock that innovation. K2 is one of those platforms that allows for this. The K2 Forms, workflow, data and reporting. It really changes the way IT provides services. No longer will we be doing the work. We allow the business to develop the apps that they need to, get them out quickly and help reduce the cost of going through workflow processes and manual workflows at that. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Tony and he'll start running you through some of these, the business process side.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for that introduction. I appreciate that and value you having CSA on board as a long-term K2 partner. Seeing good things in the things that CSA is doing in the space, and look forward to continuing the relationship. Right, thanks everybody. My name is Tony Ruppel. I'm one of the business development managers for K2 Australia. What I'm going to do today is just take you through a couple of slides, introduce you to a couple of key concepts around the K2 platform as background knowledge, and then I'll hand over to Sean, who will take you through a demonstration of an employee application with a workflow process behind that, and we might even, if we have time, show you how we quickly build something as well. Really, this session is aimed as an introduction. We can't possibly cover everything that there is to cover with regards to the K2 platform today. Rather, we just want to whet your appetite and show you what's possible with the platform. And typically, we can build these apps in quite a short space of time. Right, so organizations today are realizing that they need to solve real business problems through the use of business applications. The businesses that are going to be the most successful are the ones that are going to be able to do this as fast as possible and as cost efficiently as possible. There's a number of ways organizations can implement business applications today. You could go and purchase an off-the-shelf solution like SAP, for example, which has got every component in it under the sun. You could decide to go and custom build what you need to build, or you could choose to use new innovative technologies like the K2 platform that allow you to assemble an application rather than custom code it. Typically, organizations would have a mixture of these three delivery capabilities within the business. Delivering applications needs to be done as quickly and effectively as possible. The applications that you choose to, or how you choose to deliver these applications is going to affect how your company is presented to your employees, your suppliers, and your customers. So let's take a quick example. Let's say, for example, you wanted a customer complaints solution. You have the choice of quickly spinning up a web page, maybe generating a PDF form and emailing that to somebody when somebody registers a complaint. Or you could build an interactive form with a workflow process behind that to manage complaints that come into the business, track them, see how long it's been taking to resolve them, assign them to the right people, and empower people to make the right decisions around that. If we look at a similar example in the context of employee onboarding, you might choose to onboard your employees on day one when they start work. That often leads to inefficiencies, time lost because we're waiting for hardware to be provisioned or laptops to be purchased, or we can be proactive and implement a solution or an application that kicks off a process the moment those contracts are signed, and when somebody arrives at work on day one, everything's in place, all the paperwork's been done, their laptop's been provisioned, and they're ready to start working. So we can define these applications as the language of your business. Applications define the way you engage with your employees and affect the way you interact with your suppliers and your customers. So it's extremely important that we get these business applications right. K2 Software aims to empower customers to build and run applications. We have a forms, a workflow, and a data component. Our goal is to really span across all the workflow processes that you have within your organization, not just employee onboarding, but anything that you might want to touch from HR to finance, legal requirements. There's many, many use cases for K2 around the world. We also want to span all the devices, and we can do that effectively going across tablets, mobile devices, that kind of thing, and adapt to your unique environment. Every organization out there has got different line of business systems. We want to make K2 invisible within your organization, but still provide that business application tool set that you need to make your business effective. So K2 offers you the best of a few different worlds. K2 is not, or doesn't always fit the textbook description of business process management, but we can offer you everything that you would expect from business process management. We can also offer you the flexibility that you would get from custom development, and we can also offer you the agility that you would expect from packaged off-the-shelf solutions. So K2 is really the best of all these worlds. From a business process management point of view, we've got all the tools in the toolbox to help you build an effective workflow process. We can handle all the rules, the escalations, everything that you would expect from workflow. From an application point of view, we can build the forms, the data integration, the reporting, and integrate into your back-end systems. We have many customers around the world doing amazing things with the K2 platform. Just to touch on one or two highlights, you can go and view these on our websites as well. Guy's and St Thomas Hospital have replaced the custom paper bed chart next to the patient's bed with the tablet, running K2 forms and workflow processes on that. Kimberly-Clark's a global organization with many, many thousands of employees. They've used K2 together with SharePoint to roll out many, many applications across the world, and have created a K2 Center of Excellence to empower different business units to help themselves build their own business applications. Shell is another good example of that kind of global rollout. And Microsoft themselves actually use K2 in many, many different ways. I think they use it across 8 departments, including HR, and they touch about 80,000 employees within Microsoft with the K2 platform. So what's in the box with K2? Essentially, there's 4 components. The forms component, allows us to build interfaces that will span across devices. Behind that, we can put in a workflow component. And we've seen it a lot where customers try and build forms without a workflow component and reach limitations very, very quickly. Sending someone an email notification with a PDF document doesn't really satisfy those workflow requirements. So that's quite important. From a data integration point of view, we've got all the tools to help you integrate into existing line of business systems, and we've got a reporting component as well. Let's drill down into each one of these. Let's have a closer look at K2 Forms. K2 Forms could be standalone forms, or that could be seamlessly integrated into existing line of business systems that you already have. For example, systems like SharePoint, Microsoft CRM, Salesforce, your intranet. K2 Forms could be embedded into all of those front ends. K2 Forms are made up of reusable components called views, and K2 views are able to access the information that powers them from the different line of business systems that you have. We have a bunch of connectors out of the box that will help us integrate into existing systems. So in the example that I've got here, I've got a feedback form, which has got a place to capture some data. But onto that form, I'm also surfacing the relevant customer information from CRM via a view, and I might even be surfacing product information from my CRM system, in this case SAP. So it's an example of one form with three usable components connecting to three different backend systems. In fact, 4, because at the bottom I've also got my attachments there coming from CRM. K2 Forms are also mobile ready. We can support responsive form design across mobile devices. And what we do is we give you a browser-based experience. So we support Chrome, Google, Firefox, and Safari. And in that way, we can go across all devices without any limitations. From a workflow point of view, we've got different workflow designers. You could create a simple departmental workflow process which has a few steps. We could also go and build a more advanced workflow process, maybe something that your IT department would get involved in. With complex rules, logic, and routing, and we can also use your line of business data to drive the rules within that workflow process. We've got also lots of integration capability, tools, and wizards to help you build, as a business user, build your workflow processes without writing code and also integrate. So we've got out-of-the-box wizards for things like Exchange, Microsoft CRM, Active Directory. You can actually, as part of an employee onboarding process, go and actually create an Active Directory account as part of that process, or manage an account, or create a mailbox, as an example. Those are all out-of-the-box features with the platform. From a workflow point of view, we can handle the simple, all the complex routing scenarios within your organization. We could send work items to groups of people, to roles, to individuals. We can even go and look up that information from your line of business system and make the rules within the workflow dynamic, so that we can send the right work items to the right people at the right time and empower them to make a decision. We can also notify people when they need, or remind them when they need to do work through escalations. So it might be a simple email notification just to remind me that my work item is due. If that fails, I could implement alternative escalations, which might notify my manager, or even reassign the task to somebody else. So here's a quick example of what a K2 application could look like. It doesn't have to be just a form. We can use K2 Smart Forms to go and create a whole standalone portal. In this case, we've got a landing page. At the top of that page, I've got a K2 view. And then see at the bottom there, I've got a list of processes that I'm busy managing. So Sean's going to take us through a similar example of this. We can also go and use the platform to create case management style solutions. So we'll see on the previous slide, I had things like assign a task, manage my employees, send a message. And on the next page of that, I have the ability to do those same kind of interactions, or trigger off sub-applications and sub-workflow processes all related to what I'm doing. So we can get pretty advanced with this technology as well. It's an example of some reporting capability that we have out of the box, where we can show graphs and controls on a K2 form. That's one way we can report on the platform. As I showed you earlier, K2 Forms could be embedded into existing line of business systems. So here's an example of a K2 Smart Form actually everything that you're looking at there from application dashboard downwards is a K2 Smart Form. It's been styled to look exactly the same as SharePoint, to the point where you can't even tell the difference. Here's an example of a standalone K2 form, and in fact it's exactly the same form that we're now showing in a standalone context outside of the context of SharePoint. So we could in fact expose K2 Smart Forms outside of your organization. Maybe you've got a contractor onboarding scenario, for example, that don't have access to your internal systems. We could expose a K2 Smart Form in that scenario. So to empower everything that I've shown you, we need data. We need to be able to access your line of business systems. One of the key benefits and differentiators for the K2 platform is the way we do that. We have a concept of K2 Smart Objects, which is essentially a layer that we put in between the forms and the workflows that you're building and the back-end systems that you need to integrate with. So K2 Smart Objects, we are able to generate these smart objects. We can also train business users to go and create these building blocks. Think of them as Lego blocks. And we can then use these Lego blocks to help build our forms and our workflow processes without having to worry about the integration. We'll leave the integration to IT. They can wire up those building blocks for us. They do that once, and we've then got reusability and can empower business users or less skilled users to reuse this technology to build their applications. So that's extremely powerful, and it forms the basis of everything that we do from a K2 point of view. We always start with the data, analyze the data, and from there we'll build up the forms. I think that differentiates us from other platforms out there that often start with the form and then worry about how to integrate into your line of business systems. So our approach is a little bit different. From a reporting point of view, you could use out-of-the-box K2 graphs and charts on a report, or we could also, on a form, or we could also integrate into your existing reporting solutions like SQL Server reporting services, etc. And from a workflow tracking point of view, K2's monitoring and doing auditing on all workflow processes in the background, so we can also provide visual reporting aids so you can visually see what's happening within your workflow process. You can drill down into that, see who's been assigned a task, and start managing those scenarios. Of course, reporting extends onto mobility as well. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Sean, who's going to take us through a quick employee onboarding experience. Thanks, Sean.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tony, and good morning, everyone. So I'm just going to switch over to my demo environment. As Tony mentioned, what I'm going to take you through this morning is very much an end-user scenario. Towards the end of the presentation, what I'll do is I'll actually build something up for you to show you what it looks like and what the design experience is like. So very many of us may be familiar with employee onboarding. For those who are not, it's really about bringing a new employee into an organization. So if we go out to market and we recruit for someone, there's obviously a lot of process that needs to happen internally inside a company to set a user up with Active Directory account details so that they can log in to their PC. We might need to go and purchase them a PC so that when they arrive on their first day of work, they have something to work on. And this process really deals with that full employee onboarding process. What you're looking at in front of you now, this is a pure K2 Smart Forms environment. So this is purely built on our Smart Form technology. You'll notice that there's things like headers and footers on this form. And all of these headers and footers and different components on this form are all based off these reusable views that Tony talked you through. If I just show you what's here, so in this header view, it picks up the user that I'm actually currently logged on as, and that's my user, Mr. Sean Lysagang. Here I have the concept of your apps. So these are different things that I can actually do inside this portal. If I search for things, you can see that I have a number of different processes that I will be able to start off. Inside K2, there's also the concept of a work list or a to-do list. And so these are different tasks that the workflow engine has told me that I need to go and complete. So for example, in this one here, there's something that I have a line manager approval. This is actually for an expense claim that I need to go and approve. But we'll play with this task list a bit as we go through the demo this morning. Down the bottom here, I have something called a My Processes view. So This just gives me an overview of different processes that I might be involved in. I can do different things. I can search across them. I can see all active or completed processes. And as we go through, what I will actually do is I'll click into these links to go through and see reports and different stage gates of where we're at in specific processes. Now, as I said, this is a full SmartForms experience, so we can take this across onto a tablet or mobile device. But as Tony mentioned, you could also take this and you can embed these forms into various line of business systems. So just to give you a flavor of what that actually looks like, I'm going to switch over to a SharePoint site. And in the SharePoint site, what I'm going to load up is a SharePoint portal. I'm just going to show you these exact same views, but now embedded inside SharePoint. So here's the exact same view, my K2 apps, where I can go through and search across those various apps. I can click on my K2 tasks, and there's my same task list that I can now go and action. And as well as that, I can go through and I can look at the various processes and use that My Processes view to see what's happening across any of the processes that I may be involved in. So this is just a good example to show you that while these SmartForms can be standalone, they too can be embedded in a variety of line of business systems, and this is just a good example of using something like SharePoint to surface those exact same forms. What is the power of that? Well, the power of that is actually that I can build these forms once and surface them in a variety of different places. These are exactly the same views that I've created, so there's one place to maintain, create, and use these specific forms. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back into my demo environment. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the employee onboarding process. So I'm going to come down now and I'm going to click on this onboard employee form. And what this is going to do for me is it's going to load up K2 SmartForm, where I can go and I can actually input all of the details of this new user that I'm going to onboard into our fictitious company that we call Denalex. A few things to notice on this form, and there's concepts of things like loading a saved draft or saving the form as a draft. A lot of customers ask for this type of functionality because when they move from the paper-based world into the digital world, obviously people can start off, fill in 20% of a form, go on lunch, come back in, and this is just a nice way to show how we can actually translate that into the digital world. You'll also see up at the top here, there's a variety of different tabs, which I'll go play with shortly. So although this tab that I'm on is the Employee Details tab, there's different tabs to add in the IT access requirements or any equipment and facilities. I can add documents or even go and locate those employees on a map to see in which areas my employees actually live on. So what I'm going to do to start off is I'm going to just add in some details here. The first that I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a new user. So I'm going to add a user called Dennis Delmy, and I'm going to put in his new email address, which is at denalex.com. I'll fill in his first name and his last name as Delmy. You'll notice when I tab off of this, the screen did a little quick refresh there, because what's happening is when I tab off of this, we're going and we're actually looking up against Active Directory if we already have a user called dennis.delmy. In this case, the form hasn't prompted me to tell me that there is a user there, so I've built in some smarts behind this form to go check if this email address is already in use or not, and in this case, it was using some of that smart object technology that Tony mentioned to go and talk into Active Directory. So we look like we're all good in this scenario. I'm going to put in Dennis's mobile number, and I will just use my mobile number for the sake of the demonstration. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go away and search across my company. You'll notice there's different types of controls in this form. This is a picker control where I can go away and search across a variety of companies, assuming I was in a group company where there might be individual companies where I want to onboard employees into. Dennis is a male in this case, and what I can do now, instead of going through and filling all these details, I just have this pre-populated link at the top, and you'll see that it's gone through and filled in this form for me. A few other things that I'd like to point out on this specific form is the first thing that you'll notice is that there's concepts of things like cascading drop-downs. So for example, here I'm going to onboard this employee into the legal department, but if I change that department into the accounting department, you'll notice that the roles actually change. So if I say that Dennis is going to be an assistant accountant, it may go pull back some salary information from one of my back-end systems. And what I can do here is if I flick between a few of these, you'll notice that the drop-downs obviously have different rules on them to pick out different kind of roles for certain departments, and then it goes away and picks up some salary information from a variety of my back-end systems. In this case, the back-end system is a mixture between Microsoft Dynamics CRM, which is a CRM system, and a SQL Server database where I go back and pull back a variety of these different pieces of data. Again, this is based off of our Smart Object technology that seamlessly goes, integrates with those back-end systems, and surfaces that data into my form. As well as that, you'll see that there is things that I can do like permanent or contract. You'll notice if I select contract, there's an end date field that actually surfaces into the form. So this is just showing some of the smarts behind the form and things that we can do from the Smart Forms technology. In this case, I'm going to go where I'm going to say that Dennis's manager is going to be myself because I'm going to go through and approve and onboard Dennis into the organization. These little pickers that I'm actually using here actually go away and integrate into our Active Directory system and bring back users from Active Directory. So again, just a nice way of showing different data that's coming into this form. What I'm going to do at the top here is I'm going to go through and show you some of these other tabs. Tabs are used just for us to surface and to structure these forms in a nice, neat way where different users can access these forms in ways that they like to. Here I can add in a variety of things. So I might say that Dennis needs VPN and special internet access. Perhaps he needs access into the SAP and to the CRM system. What I can also do here is I can click on the Equipment and Facilities tab, and here what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can bring in a variety of processes into this onboarding process. So for example, what I'm going to say is that Dennis is not going to use an existing PC. He's not going to use existing hardware, but what I want to do is I want to order some new hardware. You'll notice when I click that radio button, if I go off it again, you'll notice that there's actually a new view that pops up, and this actually allows me to integrate with my purchase order process. So what I want to go do is I want to go and order a new laptop for Dennis for his arrival. So I'm going to say, all right, he needs a W540 printer, and I'm just going to order one of those. And when I actually go and kick off this onboarding process, what's going to happen is this is going to tie in with my purchase order process and already go and link these processes together, which is really the power of the K2 platform to be able to call one process from another and have one central view over all things that are happening inside this process. Okay, so I'm going to go back into the employee details view, and what I'm going to go off here is I'm going to submit this onboarding process. You'll see that I automatically get prompted with a reference number. In this case, it's EMP04281, and it tells me that the form has been successfully submitted. What you'll notice down on my processes is you'll see that there has been a new process that has kicked off. And if I come into something here called the view flow diagram, this view flow diagram is really a graphical representation of the process. And if I had to show you one of our K2 designers where we build up one of these workflow processes, these are the blocks that I drag and drop onto the design canvas to be able to graphically kind of start this up. So you'll see here this diagram is color-coded for me. Green icons indicated things that have actually happened inside the process. So the process started off, it went through, and currently it's gone and provisioned up an Active Directory and email account for our user called Dennis. And then what this process has done, it's split across to 4 different teams, right? So here you can see that the facilities management team got a task, human resource team got a task, the security team got a task, and the IT authorization team got a task. You'll notice at the top of my screen, I've also been receiving some text messages to tell me certain things that have been happening in this process, and that's because I am the manager of this user called Dennis. You'll notice automatically how we set this process up is facilities management, that task is already completed, and the security task has already completed. And this is just a way to show how multiple parallel tasks can come back. And before we move on to this employee information validation task, there's certain things that have to happen inside this workflow process. So the first one is in the human resources task, I just want to go show you some of the things that happen behind the scenes. So in the human resources, I can see that in this scenario, I have assigned this task to a group of users, and in this case, that group of users is called the human resources group. For the sake of the demonstration, I've also assigned it to my users, so to the Sean Lysigang user, so I don't have to switch between users. But this is just showing how we can assign a task to a group of users, and anyone in that specific group can now go pick up and action that specific task. If I show you a slightly different example, in the IT authorization task, what I've done is I've actually assigned this in a slightly different way. So I've used something that we call round-robin tasking. So for example, you could have a team of 5 different users, and round robin means that if, for example, the first 4 users have already been assigned a task, K2 will automatically go away and find the next user and assign a task to them. In this scenario, it's a user called Brandon, and again, in this scenario, what I've done is I've actually just assigned this to my user Sean to make it easy for me to go through the demonstration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that view flow diagram up inside this tab, and I'm actually going to switch back into the My Processes web part. You'll see that down the bottom here, you can see things that have already happened in the process have already been added to what I call the business audit. So things that have gone on, who these tasks are assigned to, what time they were assigned to that user, and what the status are of those specific tasks. At the top here, what I can actually do is I can go into process graphs as well, and I'll delve into more of these as we go along through the process. But these are the various stage gates of the process, how long they've taken, and I can obviously delve down and go into each of the reports and see what's been happening. If I just go back into my work list, you'll now see that I have these 2 tasks that have actually been assigned to me. So in the first instance, I'm going to go into the IT authorization task, and I'm just going to click on that. What this is going to do, it's going to take me into a K2 smart form, and there's a few different things that I'd like to point out on this smart form. Number one, you'll notice that we've kept the familiar tab concept where the IT team can now go through and see exactly what needs to happen. So remember, I checked that this user needed special internet access and VPN access. They can go review everything that they may need to set up for this specific user. Once they've reviewed all of that information, they can come through here and they can say, all right, this user looks all good, add some comments into the process, and what's going to happen is they will go through and submit off the process. What you'll notice is when I come back into my screen here, you'll notice that the IT authorization task has now dropped off of my task list. Because me, as this user, I've now completed all the work that I may need to do on that task. And if I come back into the view flow diagram, you'll see that the IT authorization task has now lit up in green. And now we're only waiting on the human resources team to go through and complete their task before we can continue on the workflow process. So let's go back in, and we'll come now into this human resource task. If I open up this task, you'll notice that this form is structured slightly differently compared to the last one. While I still have the concept of tabs at the top, because the human resources team may be dealing with some sensitive data, things like salary information or things like that, if people walk past their screens, what they want to be able to do is have this data so it's in these collapsible views. So here, for example, I can open up and I can see that I'm dealing with this new user called Dennis Delmy. I can look at maybe any sensitive information like dates of birth or things like that. Once I'm finished with that piece of information, I can then go open up the next view. And this might be a more sensitive view which contains things like salary information. So in this scenario, the HR team want to go through and they want to structure their form slightly differently. And this is just showcasing the power of, again, how we can structure forms in smart forms exactly how users would like to see them. Now, for the HR user, what I may want to do for Dennis is I want to add in a training course for him. So maybe we want to send Dennis on a K2 training course. So we'll add some details in there. Also inside the platform, there's interesting things like validation that you can create. So obviously, I'm trying to schedule Dennis on a course on the 3rd of March 2015. In this case, we're using some of the smart forms rules to go away and see when Dennis is actually coming onto the company. And in this scenario, it's saying to me, hey, well, you can't actually schedule Dennis on a course before he's actually started with the company. So just showing you some nice things like that. Let me go and correct that, and I'll schedule Dennis on the course from the 1st of April. Perhaps it's just a 2-day course, so the 1st to the 3rd of April. And what I can do now is I can say, and in some comments here, and say all tasks have been completed. When I go through and submit this off, again, I'll be redirected back to my dashboard. Again, what you'll notice here is that task has now dropped off of my task list because I've finished that. And if we come back into this view flow diagram, what we'll see, and we'll watch, we'll give it a few seconds to pick it up, but what we'll see is we'll notice this diagram will change. That human resources task will change from blue into green, and then it will go through and complete the rest of the steps inside this process. There you go, it's just done it for us. And we can see now that the onboarding process has now been completed, and we're going through and doing a number of other things. If I wanted to go across this and I wanted to go see different charts, I can now go look at this whole process and I can actually see which parts of the process actually happened, how long each of these parts of the process actually took. I can actually look at this in a slightly different way and maybe in a bar chart view, and I can now go and look at all of the reporting information that K2 gathers for me, and I might say in this scenario, oh, the human resources team in this specific process took a lot longer than some of the other steps in the process. And using this nice, rich reporting information, I can go and tweak and optimize my process as I go and build up some nice history around these various processes. If I go back into my processes web part, what you'll see is it has dropped off because it now has been completed. If I go and view any of the completed pieces, here's Dennis Delmy. I can now open up this specific report, and I can go and see everything that may have happened. So I can see which user actually actioned this task, what the status was, what their final action was. I can also come in and I can view process graphs for this specific process, and if I go and click into any of these pieces, I'll be able to go and look at the various users and what has happened. I can also go up a level and I can say, all right, well, let me compare this to all employee onboarding processes that have actually happened inside my organization, and I can go and I can delve down into each of these parts of the process. Again, from this nice My Processes view, I can go into the view flow diagram and I can go get access to all of those charts and nice things that have happened inside the process. Okay, so that in this scenario is the end of the employee onboarding process. Just to give you a view into some of the email notifications that were sent behind the scenes, I'm just going to open up my Outlook account because I would have received some notifications as we moved through the process, and we'll just wait for those to sync up and to come into my mailbox. There's a nice piece of functionality inside K2 called Smart Actions. Smart Actions is actually the ability to action these workflow tasks via email, and once these emails have actually synced up, I'll actually show you one of these emails that I got where I can actually reply to all of these tasks using my email. So if I open up one here, this is just the email that I would have received at the end of the onboarding process. It's actually snapshotted a little PDF with all of the new details of that specific employee, what I need to go and might need to procure for them, if I need to order new hardware. So that's one of the notifications that would have got sent through to me. The other one is, let me just pull up one here. Here's the first one. Sorry, here it is here. And you'll notice inside this email, what I could actually do is if I was out on the road, maybe I was about to jump on a flight, instead of having to open up those forms, what I can actually do is I can reply using email, and I can actually reply with one of these actions, approve or reject, and that would actually allow the workflow to carry on, and I could action tasks using my email. So just another nice piece of functionality in K2 that I can potentially use. All right, going back into here, I just want to show you something else. Here is one of these expense claim items that I have on my work list. I just want to show you how you can bring in other reports into these tasks to provide you more information that allow you to make better decisions using workflow processes. So if I open up this task, this is a slightly different form than I'll see, and in this case this is an expense claim form. What I've done here inside this expense claim is I've surfaced some reporting metrics straight into this form for me. So here I have a user that's submitting an expense claim. What I can actually do is I can plot some trend information to say, okay, over a number of months, what is the average expense claim amount? I could maybe plot things here like budget versus what is left. And this is just really showing me how I can empower users with more information to make better decisions using some of the workflow information that we gather as we move through processes. All right, so hopefully that gives you an indication and takes you through some of those 4 different tenets of K2. So just as a summary, I took you through some forms and showed you a variety of ways that we can actually surface forms to users. Using these forms, I actually routed some workflow tasks around to different users and assigned them tasks. I showed you how we can pull in data using our Smart Object technology. Some of the ways that I showed you was we use actually Smart Objects to pull in Active Directory data or SQL Server data or anything like that. And also what we did is we took you through some different reports and some different metrics of how you could actually pull this reporting metrics into various forms and empower users to make better decisions. I'm sure some of you would like to see how we actually build up and create some of these workflow processes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into more of a design experience, and I'm going to open up something called the K2 Designer. Now inside the K2 Designer, I can actually go through and I can create different of these data or smart objects. I can put views or forms on top of them, and I can actually create some workflows. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move down into one of my categories here, and here you'll see I have a webinar CSA directory. And the first thing that I'm going to do in here is I'm going to create a smart object. So a smart object is the way that I'm going to actually store some data. In this scenario, maybe I'm just going to add in a smart object that stores contact details for specific users. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and I'm going to say I would like to create a new smart object. And on the right-hand side here, what I can do is I can go through this wizard and build up one of these smart objects. So what I'll do is I'll just call this the webinar CSA, and I'm going to call it the contact smart object. And inside this smart object, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few fields. So I will put in first name. I will put in last name. What I may do as well, just to show you some different fields, I will put in a contact date. You'll notice there's a variety of different types of fields that I can actually have here. Because it's a contact date, I'll use a date time. And let me add one more inside here for you. So let's use something like a file upload. So let's use something like an attachment. Okay. You'll notice that that is the nice graphical way that I can go and create one of these smart objects. And if I move through these wizards and I finish it off, you'll notice on the left-hand side here now, I have this webinar CSA contact us smart object. Now, in order to be able to surface this onto a form, what I need to be able to do is I need to be able to put a smart form view on top of this smart object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on here, and I'm going to say I would like to go and design a view. And I'm just going to call this the webinar CSA contact view. Okay. And what I can do now is I can go and say that I would like to go and create those labels. I can change the layout of the specific view. And what I can do is I can go and actually say which of these fields from my smart object I would like to go and show on my form. Behind the scenes, K2 has already taken care of all of the wiring up of this data for me. So it already creates the methods that allow me to create, save, update, and delete any of this information. So really, as a user, I don't need to worry about any of that. K2 has taken care of all of it for me. I'm just going to put one button on the form, and that's the create button. And you'll see here that very quickly it's actually built up and created this view for me. What I can do is at any stage I can click on any of these different fields. I can go and I can actually change any of these fields to a variety of different types of controls. So here are a few of the different controls. There's things like autocompletes or drop-down list boxes or nice reporting controls. There's labels, multi-select. I think the power of SmartForms is that we have a variety of these controls out of the box. And if we didn't have one, you can actually go and create your own control and plug it into our platform. So some very nice capability there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish this, and you'll see now that I've already created that view. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create us a contact form that I can go and drag and drop one or more of these views onto. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say I would like to create a new form, and I will call it the webinar CSA form. And it now gives me this design canvas where I can drag and drop a number of these views onto. So here, if I drag and drop my Contact Us view onto there, I'll just give it a nice heading and call it Contact Us. Inside the forms technology, there is a number of different themes and ways we can style the form. And here you'll see that I can actually select and I can go and change any of these forms to have different types of look and feels about them. I can go, you can obviously go and create your own themes. You can style this and make this look like exactly your company branding. And it's a really nice capability of the SmartForms technology. Obviously, one of the powers of K2 is that I can reuse views. So once I've created one of these views, I can drag and drop a number of them and I can reuse them. So here, for example, I have a header view that just has a nice K2 logo on. I'm just going to drag and drop and use that view there. and I might have a footer view that I use across all of my forms. So I'm going to drag and drop that on, and I will add that there too. If I finish off this form, what you'll see very quickly, and if I go and actually run this form, there's my form, very easy created within a few minutes, reusing some different views across the platform, and I can go and actually fill in this form now, first name, last name, maybe add the contact date, and go and add any attachments that I may have. So showcasing some very nice capabilities of the forms technology and how we can very quickly and easily build up these forms. All right, I'm going to pause there. I know we have 10 minutes left, and I know there's a lot of questions in the Q&A manager, but I hope that kind of gives you a little peek into the K2 world, how we can bring together the worlds of forms, workflow, data, and reports. And of course, if we can help with any other demos or you have specific scenarios, either Dan or Tony will be happy to help out. Okay, Dan, I'm going to load up the slides and I'm going to move back over to you. And I guess we can open it up to questions there if you would like to.
Okay, well, Sean, I might like, or Tony, do you want to just run through some of the questions? I haven't got those on my screen.
Okay, so we'll open up the Q&A session manager. A load of questions here, so really good to see everyone. I'll take some of them. So is all of the data coming from CRM, or are you integrating with a separate HR application? So Rob, in that question there, some of the data there was coming from a CRM system. For example, some of our company information was all getting pulled from a CRM system. I actually pulled in a lot of data from a variety of other systems, including things like Active Directory and SQL Server. And that's really the power of Smart Objects, being able to go into any of the data that you have inside your organization and pulling that into an application. All right, the next question comes from a user called Joe. Joe asked us, do you have any K2 mobile apps? Yeah, Joe, great question. We have a wide variety of mobile apps. There's apps for iOS, for Android, for BlackBerry, and these are all available through the various app stores, and you can actually get all your task lists on your specific apps and then go interact with them.
I'll take the next question there, Sean. I see that there's a question regarding CRIS21 integration. Have we ever integrated into CRIS21 as an HR application system? Most definitely we have done that. We have a number of customers in Australia who have integrated into CRIS21, again, leveraging our K2 Smart Object technology. To my knowledge, CRIS21 runs a SQL database. So we could read from CRIS21 using our out-of-the-box connectors. But if you wanted to write to it as well, we could integrate with web services or the CRIS21 API that gets exposed, and again, wrap that into K2 reusable components that, for example, would allow business users to create forms or workflow logic against that data and be able to read and write from CRIS21.
Excellent. Thanks, Tony. The next question, do you support Office 365? Yes, we have a very, very good Office 365 story, and we have a wide range of customers who use both SharePoint on-premise and in the cloud. The great news about the K2 platform is it actually spans both on-premise and cloud, offering seamless functionality between the both of them. So we have a number of kind of customers using those hybrid approaches, and we definitely support both of those. Next question, are these forms HTML5? Yes, they are all HTML5 based forms, and that means that you can actually run them cross-device and cross-browser. So we support all the different browsers, whether that be Safari, Mozilla Firefox, Internet Explorer, or Chrome. So that's a great question as well. A question, is this going to be made, is the session going to be made available via recording? Yes, it will be. We'll send out the recording to all the people who have attended the webinar or all who registered from the webinar, and Emma will send that out following the session. Another good question here, do you support offline forms? Yeah, we actually have some exciting new technology that we've just released. It is around offline forms capability, and that is the ability to be able to submit forms while you're offline, perhaps I'm in a plane, and actually queue those up to when you come back online. We have a variety of customers who are actually asking for that, and that is some exciting new technology that we have put into the product. All right. Any other questions? Tony, can you say?
Maybe you need to answer this one. I don't know the answer myself. But if you wanted to expose a form outside of the organization, what kind of what do we need to do to enable that, and is that possible?
It's definitely possible, and we have a number of customers using the forms technology in that way. You can obviously expose those forms either anonymously, so you could expose the form to the public. A good example of that is when perhaps a local government organization wants to put in a, I don't know, perhaps a graffiti reporting system. You're not necessarily going to get users to log in to use that form, so we support that type of anonymous access. As well as that, you could actually also have users external to the organization, so that may not be in an Active Directory structure, but might be stored in something like a SQL Server User Manager, and K2 has the power and capabilities to support multiple user authentication mechanisms. So another great question there. Okay, I know there's a heap of other questions in there, but I don't think we're going to get time for all of them today. There are some repeats in there. If there are any other questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A manager, and we'll go through and do our best to answer all of them for you. All right, Dan, I think that's it from Tony and I, so we'll hand over to you to finish things off.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everyone, for participating today. You've got my email address there. Please feel free to ping me if you'd like some questions answered outside of this session, and happy to organise for demonstrations beyond today. And yeah, just once again, thanks all for attending. We'll leave it to you.
Thanks, everybody.
Excellent.
Enjoy
Thanks
your
very much,
afternoon.
everyone.
Bye-bye.